Okay, today we're going to be doing lesson number 2 in Photoshop, which is going to focus on creating graphics instead of creating or editing photos. So last time we were editing photos, today we're going to be working with graphics. So we're going to be doing some things like resizing, adding text, changing the color of objects, things like that. Alright, so let's go ahead and begin. The first thing that you need to open from the classroom are these files, Lion Transparent and ECHS Small. We're going to be starting with Lion Transparent. If you look in the layers, you'll notice that there's 2 layers on Lion Transparent. There's this layer 2 and layer 3. Layer 2 is the background layer, and it is simply a transparent moire pattern. So the first thing I want to do is rename these layers, because you don't want to have a bunch of unnamed layers. As you add more and more layers, it can get very complicated. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on layer 2, then double click where it actually says layer 2, and then delete that and call it background, because that's what it is. And then I'm going to go to layer 2, click on that, double click on layer 3, and we're going to call that the lion layer. So now I want to actually put this lion on a white background. So I'm going to click on the background layer. And then over here, you have these 2 paint chips. So the first thing I want to do is actually get my paint bucket tool. Your paint bucket tool might be underneath the gradient tool. So if what you see is the gradient tool, then go underneath the gradient tool by holding down the gradient tool with your regular left mouse button, and then switch to the drag over and switch to the paint bucket tool. Right, it looks like a little paint bucket. All right, now you probably have the same 2 colors I do. If you don't have these colors, let's say you have some strange colors, how can you fix that? Well, if you just have black and white, but you have black on top, if you try to paint with black, that's what you're going to get. So we don't want to do that. I'm going to go to Edit, Undo Paint Bucket. And I'm going to switch by clicking on these little elbow-shaped arrows right there. Right, switch it to white. And now if I paint, I can paint in white. What if you don't have white? What if you have red? Right, like that. Oh, that's interesting. What if you have gray? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here to image, and we're going to go to mode. We're going to change from grayscale to RGB color. And we're going to say don't merge. We don't want to merge the layers. Okay, so what if you have red or gray or something, right? You see when I click on the red, I can choose now whatever color I want, right? I can pick any of these colors, but I'm going to pick white so that I can paint this in white. But we definitely want this to be in color now, so we're good. Okay, so now let's click on the lion layer. And I'm going to go to my move tool, right? This little plus up here in the top corner. And I can now move the lion around. Notice that when I move him, right, I can see these purple, kind of pinkish purple lines, which allow me to put him in the center. That's going to be important because in a minute I'm going to go here to Edit, Transform, Scale. Scale is the designer's word for resize. Okay, I want to change the scale of him, right? I'm going to make him smaller. So whenever I scale an object, I want to hold down the Shift key, because here's what happens when I don't hold down the Shift key, right? If I just grab it, well, interesting. So you notice right here between the W and the H up here in the top, you'll see this button is pushed down, and that's keeping it from becoming not scaled properly, which is good. We want the width and the height to be linked together so that it scales. Another thing you can do is hold down the Shift key when you are grabbing these and changing it. So if you notice that it shifts to something it shouldn't, then you don't want that to happen. All right, so let's the other thing we can also set is the exact percentage, right? Up here you see how right now I have 36.6%. Let's set that to an exact percentage. Let's set that to 35%. We'll hit enter. Okay. So now you notice I was selected on that. So to deselect, so let me go back. I'm going to hit transform scale again, right? So what you really want to do is go up here to this little check mark and go ahead and hit the check mark. And what that's doing is it is now making the finalizing of your scaling. Okay, so we can, okay, you notice when I put him in the center, the exact center puts that box around him, right? So it's letting me know I am in the exact center. Okay, so I put my lion in the center. Now let's recolor the lion. So I want to put the white on the bottom chip. I'm going to put the black on the top. And I want to pick a new color. So I'm going to go over here to my ECHS small. And I want to get this blue color, this because I want to get the exact same color. So I'm going to come over here and grab the eyedropper tool, which is also called the color picker. And I'm going to pick that blue, right, off of that color. So now it still should stay blue. So all I did was come over here and use my eyedropper, and I picked that blue color, right? Told it that's the color I want. So now I'm going to get my paint bucket tool, and we're going to click. You notice it has an arrow next to it. I'm going to put the arrow on one of the ears because it's a nice big black spot. Okay. Now notice all it did is paint that one spot because it's on contiguous. So I'm going to go up here, undo paint bucket, and I'm going to uncheck contiguous. What contiguous means is everything next to it that's the same. All right. I don't want it. I want it to paint everything that's black. So there we go. It painted everything that is black blue now. So I also want to paint inside of here, all of this area, a lighter shade of blue. So I'm going to just pick a new lighter shade of blue. Right, and I'm going to paint, well, okay, so that's my fault. That's what happens when you paint everything, right? I want to paint contiguous now, right? I don't want it to go outside of the head. I want it to only paint what touches, right? So anything that touches this white, it'll paint. Okay, so I want it, that's a little bit too dark. So let's find a undo. Let's get a lighter, an even lighter. There we go. Shade of blue. There we go. And then I have to color in. Now notice there's a few tiny little spaces that it didn't paint in. So let's get your zoom tool, magnifying glass right here. And I'm going to draw. I'm going to hold down and I'm going to zoom in, right, to really close because this is really small. Then I'm going to use my move tool to move the head back in the center. Then go back to get my, now there's a couple different ways I could do this, right? I could paint this in, or I could try to use the paint bucket. So let's use a different tool. So let's use the paintbrush tool. Look how fat the brush is right now. I want to make this brush, I want to make it the hardness 100% and the size 1 pixel. Okay, now I can paint right on top of each of these. Very, very, very close, right? So that way I'm actually painting over just those tiny little areas. Because if I tried to do this with the paint bucket, it's just not going to be very effective in those really tiny small areas, which is why I didn't paint in there in the first place. Okay. Alright, so now I got all of my areas. Now notice if I try to zoom again, it's just going to keep zooming in, right? Till I get down to the pixels, right? Now I'm seeing each and every individual pixel of my artwork. What if I want to zoom out? So on your keyboard, you want to find the Alt key, right? The Alt key or the Option key, and you want to now zoom out. Okay, I'm going to grab my Move tool. I want to put the face back in the center. Yours might not have moved, but mine did. Okay. Put them in the center. Okay. I'm going to zoom in one more time so that I'm at 100% down here in the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, I don't think I'm top to bottom. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Nice and centered in the middle. All right, now that's pretty good, right? So what if I want to make, more to it? I want to add something else to make it more interesting. So let's just add some text, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add some text. Okay. So we're going to put early, college, high school. Okay, and then I can move this. Right. Notice I can even make sure it's centered on the page or centered over the lion. Okay. All right. So notice all I had to do was like click 3 times and then it highlighted the whole thing instead of having to like grab it over here and try to drag it across. You can just put your cursor anywhere. Like if I click 1 time on that, it selects just that. If I click 2 times, then it selects everything. Okay. All right. So I can go up here to my type menu. I have some choices. So I like Impact. It's a nice big fat font. So I'm going to choose Impact. Regular is the only choice. Some other fonts like Arial, right? You have lots of choices on Arial, like Arial Black or whatever. But I'm going to go back to Impact. We can change our font size, right? Fonts are in points. 60 is a bit too big. Let's go to 36. Okay, that's good. We're not going to mess with that. I can center it, right? So that way, hopefully, there we go. Now it's centered on the page. Got to use your text tool, right? Always remember you got to use your text tool to affect text. Okay. I could even curve this, right? So let's put a little arc on it, like that. I can bring it down like that. Get my text tool. I can change the amount of bend, right? I want to make it more curvy or less curvy. Right? You can do some different things. I'm just going to leave these at 0. Okay. And then again, you can use your check mark to tell it you're done. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do again is I'm going to select all this and I want to put a style. So I'm going to go up here to Layer, Layer Style. And I want to go ahead and put a drop shadow on here. So I got a drop shadow on there. I'm just going to use the default drop shadow. And I'm also going to give it a stroke. Okay, a stroke is not like what you think. Okay, so we're going to click on stroke. I'm going to choose the color. I want to use the same color that's the color of him. Now notice it just like looks like it took over the whole thing. And that's because the stroke right now is on the inside. I'm going to put the stroke on the outside. And it's way too thick. So I'm going to make it less. Let's make it like a 3-point stroke. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm going to make my drop shadow. Make my drop shadow a little bit bigger and a little farther away. So here's the size of the drop shadow, right? You can see. And then I can make the spread bigger and the distance. Okay. So I like that. That's good. And then just put it there.